Hey everybody, it's John Willis. I'm still at DevOps Enterprise Summit 2023, Amsterdam. This is a version of the Ignite I did yesterday on my Japan study trip. It turns out it was great, but it was very crowded, very noisy, and a few people had asked about my presentation, so they couldn't quite hear it. So I just figured I'd put maybe a 10-minute video together and just share it with you all if you're interested. So yeah, last week I was in Japan, and it was a study trip run by Katie Anderson in her incredible book, Learning to Lead, Leading to Learn. The reason I think it's such a fascinating book is the book is about an encounter she had with Mr. Yoshino, who spent 4 decades at Toyota, and really just she draws out these incredible stories of his successes and actually a real failure. And just to give you a heads up, Yoshino was the Toyota side of Numi. So he basically managed the training of John Shook. And in fact, that's how Katie wound up meeting him. So she runs this trip twice a year, and I highly recommend it. And see if I can get some of the DevOps folks maybe to go next year with me. I'd love to go back again. So anyway, that's me on day one. So it was a 5-day excursion, and so Katie Anderson study trip. And there's Mr. Yoshino. What a wonderful man. Just like 79, I believe they said. Katie said he was, and he just wants to learn, wants to engage, wants to teach. Just that you sort of admire. I'm 64, and just to be that sort of passionate. And so the first part of the first day, we got a lecture and a Q&A with him. It's just the ability he hired in at Toyota in 1966. Basically, that's when big things were basically about to begin. I mean, some of the stuff had happened early on with Deming and Duran and a lot of the sort of the US masters that went over there, but he came in right at the time when, Toyota, and I think, no disrespect to some of the American authors and scholars, but spending 6 months at a tier one supplier to Toyota is a lot different than talking to somebody who's spent 4 decades. So, one of the things that Katie did in the beginning of the trip that I thought was really interesting is it comes from John Shook sort of writings, and is that like we talk about lean, and by the way, they don't really call it lean in Japan. In fact, early on, I guess in the 90s, when some of the lean practitioners went over there and said, "How do you do your lean?" And like, what the heck is lean? And by the way, they don't know what Toyota Kata is either. And but Katie had asked the sort of question for us is like, where you think sort of like, if would lean exist, sort of American sort of name for it, but really what comes from primarily Toyota production systems. Where did the influence come in what we learned? Was it Toyota? Was it Japanese culture? Or was it just human traits? And I struggle to say, sort of where it was based on my knowledge, and my knowledge was completely incomplete. Not that in 5 days I completely understand the culture and all, but boy, do I have a complete different understanding. I'll show you at the end of this presentation where I put my dot in the at the end of the week. So, like I said, Mr. Yoshino lectured us, and what was really great for me was I got an interview with him that I'm going to basically curate and hopefully get him on a podcast. But he basically made it absolutely crystal clear by the time he arrived in Toyota in 1966, Deming was the buzz at Toyota. So if there's any question about Deming's influence of Toyota, it is crystal clear that Masao Nomoto, Toyoichi Ono, Shingo were all talking to Mr. Yoshino about the influence of Deming. All right. So, and again, I have some of his direct quotes at some point. And so that afternoon on the first day, we actually went to a tier 2 Toyota supplier, sort of a metal supplier. They create some of the metal panel parts. One of the things that was, I'll try to point out a lot of the commonalities that was so interesting is the use of signaling and visualization in the factory. Just very aggregate visualization everywhere, signaling. Most times it's music, even from a safety perspective, a crane was coming by or a truck was unloading. you'd hear a certain kind of music. So we saw this, and this was interesting. Another commonality was the how almost all of the leaders, Mr. Yoshino made this comment that the Takanari Kato, I guess I'll probably pronounce names terribly, but was a serious leader. The bus ride after this, and I really started thinking about this notion of a serious leader. And I want to write some more about this and really sort of sit back and think about it. But this was a third generation president, and he basically said, we, always pursue manufacturers, good products, not great products, no platitudes here. And we try to become a useful company in society. So though another common thread was every company, and it wasn't platitude, it was pure involvement with the community from every angle, from hiring to giving back to everything. And then on day 2, we actually visited the Toyota Commemorative Museum of Industry. This is the best museum out of all the Nagoya. So we wound up starting in Nagoya, and this was the original Toyota Loom works, right? So this is the actual one of the original administration buildings. And then on the right there is, if we know Jidoka, that was the machine that Tsukachi Tokiota basically created. The patent that he sold on this machine. So this is the sort of mistake proofing, like it had a needle and needles, right? And if the needle broke, actually if the needle broke, a weight would drop and it would actually stop the machine. So the original sort of Jidoka concept, right? Also in the museum, they had a replication of the original just-in-time pre-Ono just-in-time, this is the original sort of Model AA. You see the tools there, and it was basically a replica of the original line. And then on the right there is the Toyo Pet. Dr. Spear talks about, and I have this in my book, my Deming book, about this was the first car that they tried to market in the U.S., and it was a miserable disaster for Toyota. The quote that Dr. Spear says that if you're trying to go up a hill, you were better off doing it in reverse. So it was just awesome to see the Toyo Pet. And then later that day, we went to an elementary school. And I thought first, like, why are we going to an elementary school? Like, all right, like you cutesy. But no, man, like I got to see the core of why the culture, that sort of triangle. One of the things is the students serve lunch to the other students. So they rotate, they serve them to the teachers. And see that thing on the right? That's a standard, sort of standard chart. It's sort of like an A3 in some ways, which is the placement for the trays for food. So students not only prepare the food, I mean, they don't create the food, they have somebody source it, but they prepare it in terms of setting it up and delivering it, but they also sort of prepare the standard chart for the placement of where the food's going to go. It's just brilliant. And then at about I think it's like 2:00, all the students clean everything, the floors, the bathrooms, everything. And they do it both service of food and the cleaning with joy. In fact, the schools have no janitors, and like twice a year they'll bring in professional cleaning, but really, I mean, the students clean the schools. And later that afternoon, we went to another, I think this was a tier 2 supplier. It depends on, I think they were tier 2 or tier 3, depending on who they were supplying, but they were another Toyota supplier, just like the first company. The thing that was interesting here is, again, visualization, signaling, but they had a world-class SMED system. So basically it was a robotic SMED, or robotic die changer that could change out in 60 seconds, and they would actually change. So they have these large sheets of metal, and they would just change dynamically with these robots, the die cutters of the metal piece to create, and literally they would change 5 times an hour, and they could make the full changeover in 60 seconds. It was incredible. There's a video at the end. I have a way to get to some of the blogs I wrote, and in there I have some postings of the videos. And then on day, day 3, we went to another fascinating company called Inna Foods, and the chairman has written this book, and it's really not available in the U.S., and Katie got us a copy, but it's called Tree Ring Management. And it's idea of slow growth. It's all the things we talk about in DevOps, and it's just if you can get your hands on this book, it is incredible. And and they, again, the notion of community and good and being, in fact, in their boardroom, they have this sign in the top back of the room behind the chairman's seat. It says, "Let's make a good company," is basically what I told was the translation is. And even sort of doubling down is they have 100 years, so tree ring, right? The rings on a tree grow slow, and over the years you can see different sort of, some years were drought, some years were, but the 100-year calendar, like thinking in terms of 100 years, and the chairman, every new hire sits down with the chairman, and chairman look, they look at this chart, and he says, one of these days will be the best day of your life. And then he says, let's have a good life together. Like, imagine that in an American company, a way to sort of, like, you wonder why, like, in America, people change jobs as much as they do, and here they basically don't change jobs. And here again, visualization, big part, signaling, visualization. In fact, most of the visualization of the places we went were found in the lunchroom, right? So it's interesting, they felt that that was an aggregate point. It was a place to get the messaging. So your Kanban boards, your Kaizen, your Hoshinkanri, all these suggestion boards, a lot of them would be found in very common, and like this one, you can't see as much, but like making it fun, making it interesting, making it visual, signaling. And then we went to another company on, I guess, the fourth day, and this was a company called Ogura. And again, they all had the common traits, but they all had the uniqueness. This was their on the right, it's in Japanese, but it was their Hoshinkanri board. And one of the things it says is time and space saving. So one of the things they told us is in 2019, that region, Ashkara, which I'm terrible at pronouncing these names, but it was devastating flood. And they were able to get the factory up in 3 days because of really so their sort of commitment to the Hoshinkanri and their version of a 5S. And another thing we saw is they constantly wanted to remind visitors and employees of these are the things we make. So, and again, having fun. So they call themselves the Back to the Future Museum, right? And then, again, visualization, see the arrows pointing, very small room, but literally walking you through all the inventions they had made, right? And what was probably most fascinating about this is that most of these companies would encourage every employee to at least create sort of some Kaizen, very small. Like the thing about in the US, I think we overthink the notion of Kaizen and continuous improvement and a Kaizen event, and they don't think of it as much in terms of an event, right? But also compliments, right? So every employee is suggested to create at least one Kaizen today and one sort of compliment day. And each team has its own unique way of, these are little sort of compliment like notes that anybody can sort of walk over to team A or team B. And if you look on the one on the left, right, there's a Ferris wheel. So one of the things that happened on the team on the left is when somebody's sort of compliment sort of bucket or whatever gets too heavy, the Ferris wheel falls down. There's a little guy with a fishing pole on the right bottom. You catch a fish. It's like really awesome. On the right there was one for coffee and donuts. There was another one with folktale. So again, just making it fun, but compliments and intrinsically motivated. Another core theme. You saw this in the elementary school. And then here on the right is, I love this. This was the COO. So she basically gave us a tour. It was just amazing. In fact, at one point she held up her copy of the goal. So I told her I'd send her a copy of the Phoenix Project. But and what was interesting, she went to dinner with us that night, and we didn't know this until we got on the bus, but she was basically looking at the chart of all the people, and she wrote us the same papers that the employees do to give compliments. She gave us each a unique compliment. It was incredible. The way they think about, like, they walk the walk. And then they have their sort of version of 5S, where they call it the sort of the 3S's and then the 2S's. So the organized, cleaning, lineup and tidiness. And then the two other S's are outcomes. But this is why I asked, what was it about 5S that enabled you to get the factory up in 3 days? And they said it was really the organizing, sorting, no electrical cables on the ground. It's so really profound. And then that night we went a ryokan, and so if you a traditional Japanese hotel in the mountains, and then if you haven't done the onsen, I'll just let it to you. They did actually talk me into the onsen, but so that was kind of weird, but interesting, but sort of fun. And then on the final day, probably again, each one was like every day was better than the next, but every day was great, right? We went to this Chesia Shinkansen cleaning company, and there's Mr. Yabe there, right in the right-hand picture. He worked for JR East, and then he was in quality. He was resilience engineering and psychological safety. He came over to basically fix the cleaning company because the cleaning company was a mess at one point, dirty. And so the idea was that, when a train and the bullet trains wind up in Tokyo Station, they have 12 minutes. And 5 minutes of those 12 are dedicated to onboarding and offboarding passengers. So they call it a 7-minute miracle because the cleaners have 7 minutes to clean the train. Before he got there, it was sort of a dirty job. The employees were embarrassed. And he changed everything, again, using some of these principles of Kaizen, Hoshinkanri. But like we got to interview, and it's amazing. They call it Shinkansen Theater. And one of the things he convinced the employees was that JR East is a world-class train. It's the bullet train, which is famous, right? And these trains are on time within like 10 to 12 seconds, right? And what he convinced the cleaners was that you are part of a world-class system. You're not just cleaners. You're like that 12 minutes is part of the world-class system of the bullet train. And the 7 minutes that you clean and the amount of cleaning they do and the theater and at the end they bow to the customers. And the customers used to be before Yabi-san got in there, they'd be annoyed for waiting. Now they look at it as a theater and a play, and the customers clap before they get on train. I mean, it's just again, you can see the YouTube version. If you follow some of my links at the end, you'll see like some incredible stories that Yabi-san has done. So what was interesting is at the end of the week, we went back to the triangle, and I'm still not positive where I want to put where I put my sort of blue circle, but I think there are some really unique things about the culture in Japan. And again, I've written a couple of blog articles. I'm trying to keep this a little shorter, so I'll let you just read the blog about my notion about the grammar school, the elementary school, and how they teach Kaizen and service and an intrinsic sort of motivation towards service to their fellow workers, fellow schoolmates, all that. So I sort of moved by blue. I think the interesting thing about this is I think probably I'm going to keep going back to this the more I learn about the sort of the tactile notion of understanding what's going on in Japan as opposed to the academic US version of it. And then on the last day, Mr. Yoshino, and there's Katie on the right, left, I guess, Mr. Yoshino, and Dumra, I guess it's called. It's pretty cool. Katie gives you this, you get people to sign it, and there's all of us. And that was just a wonderful team of people that I just loved. And again, I have a whole set of blogs here that literally captured pretty much every day and all the interesting things that I tried to observe. Well, thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed this. And if you want to ping me about possibly, I talked to Katie, maybe we can get 5 or 6 of us to go on next year's. I already have a couple people already told me that count them in. So just give me a holler and we can figure this out.